Yeah. Okay. First of all, very welcome all to the audience and also to the speakers. My name is Ron Kulvers. I'm the coordinator of the so-called VN Smart Data Spearhead, which is actually a research program between Maastricht University, Solidaridad, and Rabobank. And we're very happy that you join us today. I think we have a very nice and interesting event with 4 speakers. We will introduce them in a minute. But what we're doing today is in a series, and the second event, because we're talking about what we call farmer-centric data governance. And in the last November, we had a nice event about the guiding principles, and my colleague Niklas will explain a bit more about it in a minute. But today we will focus on the business case, and the business case for farmer-centric data governance. And as I already said, we have four very interesting case studies and speakers. And the overarching question we have today is how desirable, feasible, and viable is it to apply farmer-centric data governance principles when onboarding farmers to the data ecosystem. So we are curious to hear from our speakers what they can bring to the floor in terms of their expertise and insights on this topic. And after this event today, we will organize another event, and that will be in autumn. So stay in touch with us, and we will inform you about the other event very soon. Niklas, can I have the next slide? So very briefly, we will introduce them also when they start speaking, but we have people from different areas working on related to farmers, value chains, and so forth. First speaker will be Candice Kroos-Kambongo from Solidaridad. She will have an interesting case study about Kvuno. After that, she will hand over to Michael Jonsen. He's from Denmark, about the ADDA case. Then we have Steffi Rijpkema. She's from the Netherlands and working at FarmTree. And last but not least, Germas Lachman. He's working at the university, but here's also a case study on Agros that he's doing with external partners. But we will come back to them in a minute. Just very briefly for the overview, it will be, let's say, approximately 1.5 hours. We have first a short introduction by FSD to remind you a bit, or maybe to introduce you a bit on the principles of we developed. Then we have 2 case studies, Kvuno and ADDA. Then we will take a short break, somewhere halfway. Then we have 2 other case studies, FarmTree and Agros. And last but not least, we will present some ideas we are working on, and also for the nearby future. So stay tuned, and we try to guide you a bit through the program. To all the audience, more than welcome. During the case study presentations, the presentations for the case study will approximately be 10 minutes. Maybe you have some questions. Please put your questions in the chat, and we will try to select, let's say, some of those questions to discuss after the presentation of each case study. And for that discussion, you have approximately 5 minutes. But let's see how it goes. Next slide, please, Niklas. Because that is, and that's, I want to hand over to my colleague, Niklas, is about the smallholder-oriented data governance principles. As we said, we had a research project on this and developed some principles. And Niklas will introduce you in a nutshell these principles to give you a little bit background what we are doing and how this maybe could be connected to the case studies we will discuss later. Thanks a lot, and see you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ron, for the nice introduction of the event. And hello to all the attendees. We are glad you are joining the series. And yeah, as Ron mentioned, we published a report on the smallholder-oriented data governance principles before. And this presentation serves as a bit of a background on those principles. But I want to start this with a number to showcase the importance of data-driven technologies in agriculture in the global south also. There's a 13 times increase in digital agriculture services in the last 10 years in low and middle income countries, basically. And this showcases that if you have a high potential combining data-driven analytics and digital technologies that can create new markets in the agri-food sector, which can be used to increase economic efficiency and also, for instance, supply chain resilience. It is used also as for creating equity through the inclusion of smallholder farmers and other marginalized populations, but also it can serve the purpose of increasing environmental sustainability through the adoption of, for instance, environmental friendly farming practices. This is serves as a background, and you can really see that why farmer-centric data governance becomes important based on this number. And there are a lot of reasons, therefore, why smallholder data is collected. And I quickly want to highlight only a few of those in the list here, which are, for instance, the topic of supply chain transparency and efficiency. This is also highly linked nowadays to regulatory compliance. If you think about the EU DR, and deforestation regulation, but also in terms of certification and increasing production, more and more farmer data is being collected. Thereby, the smallholder is at the center of the farmer data ecosystem, as they are the data source in this ecosystem. And this really underlines the importance of the development of the farmer-centric data governance principles. We developed those principles in the past year because we think that it requires the more powerful and the well-resourced stakeholders in this data ecosystem to commit to a fair treatment and compensation of the smallholder farmers. On the next slide, you will see a short infographic or an infographic we published with our 5 principles. You can find this also on our website or in the report. And the data governance principles are about ethical responsibility and accountability on one side, but also about sustainable benefit sharing. So all stakeholders, including the farmers, should benefit from the data collection. The third principle relies on the legitimate expectations on privacy and security, so linking it to the GDPR, for instance. The fourth principle is on the provision of practical necessities, and the fifth principle is on transparent and deliberate decision-making and conflict resolution. As I said, you can read more about these on our website, and this was only a short reminder on those principles, and serves maybe as a starting point for the upcoming discussion. And I think we are ready to hear now from our first case, first case of today, which is Kvuno. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and Candice, if you're there, you can unmute yourself and start sharing yours.
No, indeed. In the meantime, thanks a lot, Niklas, for presenting. We already saw that also in the meantime the chat is working, so that's good. Indeed, the audience, just remind ourselves, if you have questions, and we hope you have questions, put them in the chat. We will have a look at it, and we will give the speakers approximately 10 minutes to present, which is not so long, but hopefully very interesting to all of us. But after these 10 minutes, we have some time for discussion. So please put your questions or comments in the chat, and we will look at it. And now I will indeed, Candice, the floor is yours to explain a bit more about the case study, Kvuno. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm going to be talking to you about Kvuno today. So Kvuno is a social enterprise that facilitates digital relationships So Kvuno makes it easier for organizations to reach farmers to deploy their services in new territories. And we do this through leveraging off very key resources. And those resources are firstly access to smartphones, but of course the smartphone is not enough, it needs to work. And so also we provide access to airtime. We provide digital literacy to the farmers that we work with so that they're able to actually access the services that we offer. We've also got an interesting motivation mechanism for our farmers so that they have the motivation to overcome the very poor networks that they have to deal with. And finally, this is augmented with what we call phygital spaces, which is a combination of both digital and physical. But I think we need to start with the context for where we work. And within Southern Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, we've got 33 million farmers. Of those, 90% are small-scale producers. And typically they lack access to very important inputs, one being quality inputs like seed, technology, and also financial services and markets that offer them fair pricing for their produce. And then to add to the complexity of this situation already, we obviously have very low levels of literacy within our farming communities. So I think that was just important to give you the context for our work. But as Kvuno, we have 3 steps to our approach. So we begin firstly by building a farmer network. And so this is to bridge the gap between farmers and also the organizations who want to provide services to those farmers. We then give our farmers access to those services through bundled services. And then finally, I think our farmers' favorite step is that we nudge good behavior in our farmers through digital rewards. And I'll talk about that a bit more. So currently, Kvuno has presence in Malawi, Zambia, Mozambique, and South Africa, and we are operating 10 hubs at the moment. In terms of our services, sorry, I skipped a slide. In terms of our services, this is currently Kvuno's offering. We started with soil tests, Kvuno Soil Labs as our first service to farmers. And then we realized we don't know whether farmers are actually adopting the recommendations from the soil test. And so we subsequently introduced Kvuno circles, which we call our digital handshakes. And essentially this is the field data collection process that happens on the ground that's facilitated by our lead farmers. And I mentioned our digital rewards, and that happens through our Zawadi program, which incentivizes farmers to continue to participate and share their data with us. We also have Peo, which is a seed multiplication business, and this is to enable that access to quality seed for farmers, as well as Malimbeu, which is a input loan program that we offer to farmers that are high performers within our ecosystem. If we look at the kind of data we collect, the slide gives you a good idea of what we're collecting from farmers, starting with the issuing of a farmer ID at registration. And this is a physical card that is issued to the farmer ID. But what it enables us to do is that with all subsequent interactions with our farmer, we're able to scan that ID. And through that process, we're then able to build up that profile of the farmer over time. Now, for the context of our discussion today, within Kvuno, the farmer is the owner of the data, and Kvuno acts as the custodian of that data. But our objective is, how do we use that data to better service the farmers that we work with, to enable those services that farmers do not have access to. So I'll give you very briefly 2 examples of that. The first is OCO Insurance. OCO provides crop insurance to small scale farmers, and OCO relies on 1, data, but 2, a network to be able to reach the farmers. And that's what Kvuno was able to provide. Through our Kvuno Circles process, we already have the farmer's field. We already know which crop the farmer grows. And so through just the sharing of that data, our agents are then able to conclude an insurance policy with a farmer using our chatbot, Wadi, by simply sharing data that has already been collected from the farmer. Then another example is CropIn. CropIn provides crop health monitoring using remote sensing, and exactly the same principle. We've already mapped the farmer's field. We know what crop the farmer collects, the farmer grows, and so through sharing that data, we're then able to receive intelligence back from CropIn on the health of the crop, which we then make available to the small-scale farmer through our chatbot Wadi, which acts as our feedback mechanism to our small-scale farmers. So to sum it up, the value that Kvuno brings is one that it reduces the cost of service provision for external providers by reducing the cost of deployment and marketing, as well as giving access to farmers that are already digitally connected into a network. And so, yeah, through that process, we're able to provide cheaper services to farmers that also benefit organizations as well. I'm going to leave it there and hope I have done my 10 minutes.
Thanks a lot, Candice. Very interesting and very good in time, I must admit. So thanks a lot. Let's see, we have some time for some questions. I don't know if there's some questions in the chat. Do you see some? And otherwise, maybe people raise their hand. That's also possible.
We haven't received questions in the chat, but if you think of any question, we'll have a time after the last presentation. So by then, if they thought of a question, we have a hand that is raised.
There's a hand, yeah. Royan Bolling, what is your question?
I think we have to allow them to talk. Okay, now you could go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So only my voice. Okay. Hi. Yeah, thanks for this great presentation and thanks for hosting this very interesting session. I think it's a very interesting model that Kvuno has. I just had one question that's about the consent, because I understood from your first session that for each additional service you want to offer to farmers, you have to kind of re-ask them for their consent to be able to share the data for that purpose. That's correct, right, CD? So I wonder how Kvuno is handling this consent part. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the question, Royan. Very good. Candice, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, that's definitely an important aspect. When Kvuno started, the data collection was really for sort of project level data. And so we did not have consent, and we don't have a formal consent process. However, with the expansion and now the introduction of external partners, this is one of our priorities, is to be able to have a formal consent process. However, I think one thing that's important to mention is, given the levels of literacy within farmers, currently it may be consent and not so much informed consent, because, you know, data ownership is a very abstract concept. And so We are in the process of developing that training, the training process for farmers to understand this is what it actually means, so that it's not just a tick the box exercise to give a farmer a form and sign it, which doesn't really mean anything to the farmer.
Thanks a lot, Candice, and also Rojan for the question. There's another question from, we take another one from Hamed. Please go ahead. Unmute yourself and yeah.
Okay, so good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you, Candice, for your wonderful presentation. I just want to ask you regarding the farmers. So is the data shared directly by the farmers themselves, or enumerators are used? And also, I want to ask, from your experience, what role does the education play? Because we are talking about smallholder farmers here, which most of the time they are not as literate as the commercial farmers. So what role does education play in your solution around the data sharing and data use? Thank you.
Thank you. Candice.
Yeah, Ahmed, you are completely correct. So we have an interesting model where we use our lead farmers essentially as the digital secretary of the group of farmers that they support. And so our focus in terms of training is on those lead farmers to be able to digitize records. But our communities are interesting in that, you know, we help each other. And so we have very different scenarios where a farmer is literate. That farmer would then help his neighbor who's not literate to be able to complete the records. And so through that process, it's sort of a community level data collection process where the lead farmer assists the farmers within his particular group to collect that data. And so it's not done with the use of enumerators. We have our lead farmers as the digital secretary for that.
Thanks. I just combine two questions from the chat before we go to the next case study. There's one question about how to gather information from the field or farm boundary, and the other one, if there's no internet connection. Is that something you can work with, Candice?
Yeah, so in terms of field boundaries, we have done extensive training with our farmers on mapping the boundaries. We have an app we've developed called Business Solutions, and specifically for its offline capability, our farmers are able to map the field, and they have come to know that if you stand under a particular tree, you will have good network to be able to sync the data. So generally, our data collection happens offline, and then, you know, if the farmer goes into town, for example, they know where to stop to be able to sync the data.
Thanks a lot. The discussion already started, but we move on to the next case study. So if you have more questions, please put them in the chat. Maybe if it's time also at the end. I want to hand over to Mikael Jonsson from Denmark to talk about the other case study. Please go ahead, Mikael.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Good. So my name is Michael Johnson. I'm the vice chairman of a Danish NGO called Agricultural Development Denmark Asia. And we have specialized in mobilizing smallholder farmers in the south. And we have developed this digital data platform for certification of smallholder farmers. One use case, among others, that we have explored is that we initially and successfully developed organic certification based on this digital data for 300 smallholder farmers in northern Uganda. And on the basis of this data and the whole process, farmers obtained an EU organic certificate, and a year later, they were able to send a container load of certified organic soy to Denmark, which was an achievement for us. Let's see if I can move the slides forward. Yes. So ADDA has ongoing projects in Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Tanzania. We work with local farmer organizations and through those. And most of our projects nowadays, they have a strong focus on climate smart agriculture and climate smart agroecological farming practices. And we do this because we believe that this is the best way that we can help farmers improve their livelihoods in this context of climate change. But working with these climate smart agroecological practices raises an interesting question. What about field monitoring? What about showing the effect of these climate smart practices? So ADDA has developed this digital platform that can assist local farm organizations and impact companies to obtain these third-party organic certifications, for example, EU organic. And we are now on the track to also prove compliance with the EU deforestation-free regulation, EUDR. And as number 3, again, I want to stress the importance of being able to conduct precise field monitoring digitally and communicate this to all the partners in real time. The system is simple, robust, cost-effective, and I claim also high-tech. High-tech because we can build on 2 state-of-the-art generic platforms that we can access from the internet, but which we adapt. So that's where we have our special knowledge, that we learn how to use these tools, and we can share this knowledge with other development partners. So, and the backend is constituted by the online GIS solution, GIS Cloud, and data is reflected on this cloud server. Data is collected by the local farm advisors. In the future, it could also be lead farmers, but this is how it works now. And at the front end, we have this world class, so to say, that we all know, many of us from our jobs, Microsoft Power BI dashboards, where we can explore data intuitively together with our project partners. And we can even hand over the stick for them to conduct some of the analysis, just providing the data in draft form, in draft dashboards. So ADDA's approach, it's a consultancy approach. So again, we assist our local partners and impact companies to tailor these mobile data collection forms and online dashboards, and we tailor them to their precise needs. So, and the beauty of this is that to a very large extent, the same mobile data collection forms and dashboards can be recycled and used again and again, adding to the efficiency of this approach. So it's cost effective. You only pay, a small partner might only need some few aspects of this. So you pay for what you need, the licenses you need. We do onward billing of GIS Cloud and Power BI initially, plus the consultancy fee. And these are not patented technologies, so it could be taken further by the local partners at some point when they feel ready. So my point here is why work on this open source cloud-based GIS? The reason is quality data. Data quality is key here. So all data that we collect in the field, it's accompanied by plenty of metadata, including geotags, timestamps, and user IDs of the people who collected it. So it can be traced back. And again, the system is, from the user end, intuitive and simple, because what the users see is the mobile data collection forms and the dashboards. And again, especially for the dashboards, the stick, so to say, in the participatory manner can be handed over to the user because we can share data on these platforms with both collectors and processors of data. And it's easy and quick to deploy this system. It's been done several times, and we can have share screening sessions on tablets, smartphones, computers, and so on. So what are the steps involved? The steps involved include 4 steps. Just as most of you probably have experienced, we do some kind of farm profiling. So the first step is that we register the fields and the farmers on the GIS cloud platform, and then we can do this real-time sharing of data on the GIS cloud platform. So that's so much for the farmer profiling. And then in step number 3, we can in real time conduct monitoring visits to the farmers, and again real time reflect the data on the Microsoft Power BI platform to everybody on the same page, so to say. So how does this look in practice? So in practice, it's the local farm advisor who walks around the field together with the farmer with the GPS in his phone turned on, and it results in such a crumb trail that you might know. And then in real time, this data can be reflected even in 3D on this GIS cloud platform, and the data is there also available for filtering in real time. So you can have a really good feel for what's going on out there. And again, the repeated visits, as any of these apps, we can collect all kinds of qualitative, quantitative data, QR codes, signatures, you go on, and most importantly, photos and videos. So a lot of opportunities there to collect meaningful data. But again, the most important feature of this is that we can reflect this data in real time in Power BI dashboards. Some people will be much better than me at producing the dashboards, but we can service it for the local partners to explore more and get further in the analysis. So there is an opportunity here for a reiterative process of visiting fields, going back and forth, and a lot of co-learning, co-exploring of data. And most importantly, that we referring to the climate smart agroecological farming practices that we are able to develop over time. You can't do this in one day, but over time we can develop some very relevant indicators to measure change over time. So just yet another very simple example, but even though simple, I think it makes a lot of sense when you work with this huge data set. And again, that's the beauty of Power BI that all of you, most of you know, but it's easy to approach this huge data set. But so we can reflect maps in real time where we can show how monitoring is progressing. Red to blue here means that the farmer has been visited, and it's by the second it's updated on the front of the system, so to say. So we have a feel for what's going on out there. And regarding, this is at the exploratory stage, but for the EUDR, we are able to show on the GIS cloud platform the 2 layers, of course, which is key. A lot of people will tell you EUDR is very complicated. Yes, it may be, but there can also be some simple, quite simple aspects here. We download the EU Global Forest Map by the cutoff date from the EU Commission webpage, and we overlay it with the polygons of the farmer fields. And we know all these rules from EU, they are in the making still, or the interpretation of the legal text is in the makings. But supposedly at some point we will have to supply GIS files to the Commission. And I'm aware that for smaller farms, it's not the polygons, but so we are at the edge here, so to say. So we've been on a journey in ADDA, and 2021-22, I had this collaboration. I could see my friend Bob Marley is in the audience from Uganda. We did this together with Global Health Network Uganda, that we leveraged this platform, and we obtained on this digital databases, we obtained an EU organic certification for the farmers. And in 2023, we had a collaboration with Social Vanilla, a Danish impact company in vanilla, and we followed closely 25 vanilla farmers on the ground. Now in 2024, we're going big and we are recording the organic farming practices of 100 smallholder farmers. My colleagues, they're in the audience also. We are recording 1,000 farmers in central Tanzania, in Dodoma and Manyara regions, towards getting an EU organic certification in sunflower. And finally, I think a source of great enthusiasm, we are in the process right now of onboarding a Danish coffee company in Kvuno, and we are profiling and recording the fields of 199 women coffee farmers in Meru district in Kenya towards securing EUDR compliance. Here, just for reference, my friend Bob Marley and farmers, Bob is here. They are holding up their organic certificate. The NGO, the name of the NGO is Global Health Network Uganda. And this was financed by CISU, a Danish under the ADDA fund. And yes, and again, okay, this cannot be fixed by a tick. I'm talking about the data governance, but maybe it can be fixed by a tick. I'm telling you. But so every time we go to collect data from the farmers, we explain about the purpose of the project. Even for northern Uganda, it was in Kvuno, which is the local language there. In Tanzania, it's in Kiswahili. And we also ask for the explicit consent of the farmer. So finally, some other aspects of data governance. I think you can already see there is an element of benefit sharing here. Obtaining an EU certification can open doors for markets and secure market access, better pricing, and so on. And yes, on these cloud servers, of course, it can be discussed, but at least we have a security layer of a password. So we can effectively share the data between project partners in real time. For Microsoft Power BI, you might know you can even do this extra security layer with a phone to secure the data even better. So we can work on that. And even locally, we often, I talk to the farm advisors sometimes on WhatsApp in Swahili and so on. It's very funny to even meet the farmers in video calls. You might have experienced yourself. But the farmer, he would or she would very often like to know the exact size of his or her field. So that's a service we can provide. And the local farm advisor on the top of the tablet or a smartphone can show around on the map and show the group of farmers to which the farmer belongs, and in that sense give some virtual sense of ownership. And again, for the formal part, all the projects where we are involved, we seek to develop a memorandum of understanding as a basis for the data ownership and sharing. Thank you very much. I'd be happy in another longer session to share more and even share inside these systems. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Michael, especially showing also the potential of the platform now as you have from a little bit smaller scale to reaching out to a lot of farmers. I just take one question, but maybe you already answered it. There was a question from Sasha, and she said, okay, you're collecting a lot of data and how to ensure the privacy and the protection of the data suppliers, but maybe you can just briefly recap on that.
I think it is a growing concern, so to say, how do we handle this? And I think even in the introductory meeting a few weeks ago, I think our spirit must be that we should do no harm, but we should not also be so afraid that we cannot act, because these European regulations can be a straitjacket. And I've heard from friends working in waste management that the European Commission, they have a hard time even living up to their own regulations. So we shouldn't be that hard on ourselves and not be afraid. I think as long as we have a security layer on top, we have user management, and we don't share the data open on the internet. And if we do share the data on the internet, we do it in aggregate form. So we can share a lot in aggregate form, and then that's an easy way to let the data privacy problem go away to some extent. And also, I mean, some of this in aggregate form, so you're sharing points, not polygons. So it's more difficult for somebody mean Russian. We didn't say this, but because to get a hand on something that could be used against the farms.
Yeah, indeed. I think that makes sense. Okay, thanks a lot, Michael. Also, thanks a lot, Candice, for presenting. Before we move on, dear audience, please keep your questions, put them in the chat or whatever, because first we have a break. We have a break until 14:50. So we have 7 minutes. Welcome back. I think it's time to continue, because after this first very interesting case studies from Candice and Michael, we have 2 more case studies to go. And the first one we want to introduce is Steffi Rijkema from FarmTree, which is, I think, based in the Netherlands. Steffi, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ron. Let me share my screen again. Oh, yeah. I think you can all see the full screen of my presentation now.
Yeah, very clear. Thanks a lot. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ron. So thank you so much also for including me in this event, and also very nice to hear the other presentations so far. I'm representing FarmTree. So FarmTree is indeed a Dutch social enterprise based in Wageningen. And yeah, we develop a tool that is, oh, I see my presentation is automatically running. Well, never mind, I'll press it back and forth if needed. Yeah, so what I want to share with you is that FarmTree supports the implementation specifically of agroforestry projects. We do that by developing our FarmTree tool that facilitates the forecasting of the impact of agroforestry systems. So it's a model and tool that can predict the potential impact of this type of land use system. Our tool is used quite globally in temperate and tropical regions, and the tool is quite fast, flexible, and it's holistic and credible because there is lots of default data available through the tool that can be tailored to local contexts. And the output of the tool is, very holistic in the sense that we can report on many different key performance indicators, and it's as much as possible science-based. So for the broader context, we focus mainly on agroforestry, though the tool can also be used for other types of land use systems. But agroforestry, as probably most of you know, is combining crops with trees. And this type of land use management systems have quite some potential benefits. For example, on additional production, nutrition, revenue for farmers, increasing biodiversity, carbon sequestration, and many more aspects. But it's quite difficult to get from those complex agroforestry systems to clear impact projections and making a cost-benefit analysis for farmers, especially if you want to consider interactions between crop and tree species, climate change, different management practices, etc. So for that, we have created this tool where you can use our software, our interface to create an agroforestry design. Behind it is also our own database that contains species on crops, data on crop and tree species. And with this software, you can create this agroforestry designs, those scenarios, We can incorporate data on soil and climate for specific locations based on open source data. And by building your scenario and running it through our model, you can extract all these performance indicators, for example, on carbon sequestration, on erosion, income for the farmer, biodiversity, etc. Just a quick glance, this is what the tool looks like. If you go to our website, you can also access the tool by creating a demo account. So this is the environment where you can make your agroforestry design. And this is just a very quick example of the type of output that the tool generates. So here you can see different graphs that actually show you that we quantify the impact in these time series, and you can make predictions for up to 50 years in the future. And our tool is offered as a license, so we can offer different types of licenses to access the tool, and we also provide additional services to support our partners and clients to make those impact assessments and cost-benefit analyses. This includes also calibrating species in local context, or helping to define those farm systems, those agroforestry scenarios. And I don't know if I mentioned it very clearly already, but the tool at the moment is not really used by farmers independently, but it's mainly used by project managers that support those projects, agroforestry projects, local farmer supporters or local agronomists also use the tool. But at the moment, the tool is not directly used by farmers. I do want to go a bit into detail on what kind of data is used in our tool and in our model and where it comes from. So as I briefly explained, we have this internal species database. We've developed it in-house. It contains of over, I think, 400 species at the moment of crops and trees. And a lot of the data in that database is based on literature, as much as possible scientific literature, but also based on field data. And this field data can be obtained through, doing surveys with farmers, asking them for their, let's say, experiences with certain crops and trees. Also local agronomists or experts can provide us that information, or sometimes we go into the field to also collect the data ourselves. And as you can see, some examples I've listed below is on like what kind of species are being used, what are potential regional yields, what are costs and prices, and some really measurable indicators. Sometimes we also do on, for example, biomass. And like I briefly mentioned, we use open source databases for climate data, for soil data, and for terrain properties. And also a public price list we use to include in our modeling and include in making those outputs. And in the interface, the user of the interface can privately change anything, modify scenarios based on local context. So this data does not get into our database, but it's themselves that can, people themselves can change, for example, management practices, expectations on prices and yields as well, but also, specific context related aspects that you want to mimic in your scenarios. Those scenarios and projections can then be stored and shared and downloaded, but they're not visible to FarmTree or used by FarmTree in any way. Briefly getting back also to the data that is collected for the database and sometimes for the model, if we do collect farm level data, we always ask for consent of our project partners that help us collect the data or that use the tool. We ask for their permission to also use that data broadly in the database, which is also used by other projects, or to improve our tool and improve our model, or do species calibration. briefly, I want to show this slide. It's a lot, but I just want to use it as expressing that we are also looking into working together with existing tools that do collect data on farm level, or that do reporting or analysis in types of dashboards that we've also seen in the previous presentation. So we aim to make this type of work more efficient for our partners, because I think our model and tool is the core expertise of FarmTree, where we create those impact outputs. But related to survey data collection tools or remote sensing tools, yeah, I think there's already a lot out there, and there's a lot of expertise that could be linked to our system as well. And then finally, reflecting a little bit on, well, the work we've done so far and challenges and opportunities, I think we are on quite a good way in the direction of bridging science and combining farmer narratives with more like practical application to make it happen that more investments are being made on agroforestry projects. What we've also learned is that sometimes there's quite some assumptions and expectations from agroforestry projects that are not always realistic. So we also demystify those assumptions with the tool. We are not, as I said, the tool is not used by farmers, which in the end, we would love to have this in one way or the other, also reaching the farmers more, of course. This is for us quite a challenge, because at the moment our target group is more on project level than farm level. So that requires at the moment to use the tool more, quite specific expertise, and the tool is not accessible, for example, on a smartphone yet. Regarding efficiency, like I said, we would love to link to data collection tools and build these API structures to not do any manual processing of data. Of course, that's also a challenge, because there are tools that are owned by different companies, and you have to always see how you can link different systems if they're not always open source or available. And we see that, for example, in scientific research projects, there's lots of data collected and difficult to really analyze it. And for that, it's time consuming and resource intensive, of course, to make it also in such a way that you can analyze and read it with our tool. So I think that's something of a challenge that we are currently, together with some partners, piloting different ways on making that more efficient and better. And lastly, I think the improvements that we would like to do, well, data can also always be improved in terms of quality that you can obtain or access or collect. But I think this webinar and also, the introduction has also made it very clear to us that our data policies regarding privacy and regarding ownership can also be very much improved. So that's what we are also working on in the very near future. That's the end of my presentation. If you want to reach out to us, please feel free to use my email address. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks a lot, Steffi, for the very interesting presentation, really showing this holistic tool. And you already mentioned several times that not at this moment, not farmers are using it. Do you see opportunities, let's say that at a certain moment, farmer groups or maybe cooperatives would use the tool?
I do. I think the original idea of the founders of our company has been that in the end, farmers should be able to make their own business case analysis, looking in how to improve their farm management practices, etc. So I think it is the end goal that we have in some way. But how to get there, I have to say it's quite a challenge, because at the moment we are developing our company and this tool based on user input. And at the moment that those are not the farmers. So it's...
That looks very promising. Let's have a look at some of the questions. Actually, I see already two questions. One is a bit how you use probably also maybe satellite data. I don't know. Is that the case? Do you use satellite data?
At the moment, we don't use satellite
Okay.
data for any input, but you can, if you use the tool, create a quick polygon on the world map. And with those coordinates, you obtain those climate and soil properties. But it's not that we use like really the remote sensing or the satellite data. No.
Yeah. And there's another question that someone said, which is anonymous, but he or she said, okay, indeed, you're talking about agroforestry, and the growth of trees, of course, depends also on management and so forth. So it's also some kind of, did you say, additional checking or improvement or advice needed next to your model,
Yes. A
Okay.
model is always just a model, I would say. It gives estimations, it gives predictions, it provides trends on potential impact. So we try to be as generic as possible and applicable as possible in many different contexts. But of course, yeah, very local specific situations can always differ, and then you would need some local advice as well.
Yeah, thanks. There's a hand raised from Ahmed. Ahmed, please unmute yourself and ask the question to Steffi.
Okay, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I just want to ask you regarding the use case for this solution. Talking about data collection, I just want to ask, because we know some of these are rural communities where the farmers are residing, because you said the farmers are the last goal that you intend to solve problems for. So I just want to ask that, is there an offline data collection model that has been developed as part of your solution, or is that something that you'll be willing to consider in future?
Yes, this is something that we are piloting at the moment with a few clients of us. They are using either already an existing data collection tool that we try to link to our system. We have been also piloting a project with a client that where we set up a Qfield and QGIS tool for, which is an open source tooling. But we are not limited to any kind of tool, and we are very much in the beginning of looking at any options that make this easy for our clients to use. So we're open to any options, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot once more, Steffi, for the wonderful presentation, and we wish you, of course, good luck with the further tool development in interaction with the farmers.
Thank you.
We move on to the next case study. Jeremias Lachman from Maastricht, partly, but also please introduce yourself, Jeremias, and also the case study we have today.
Thank you very much, Ron. Do you see my screen now? Yes, right?
Yes, you can see it. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so first of all, well, thank you very much for the invitation and for the possibility of presenting this case. I'm not part of Identi, the company that I'm going to present. I am a postdoc researcher at UNU Merit. I'm also working in a different project with Ron and Sidi. I happen to know the entrepreneurs behind this company, and I found it as really interesting and in line with the things that were discussed in the previous seminar. And that's why I had this idea of presenting and discussing this case. Identi, it's a spin-off company of Agros, the one that actually created this digital identity, and now Identi is a non-profit company, which also, well, that is now managing this digital identity that I'm going to present today. So, first of all, in the Latin American region, almost 40% of the farmers are disconnected from the formal economy, and this brings a lot of drawbacks, such as information asymmetry and a lot of constraints to access to different resources, from credit loans, inputs, specific services, and also technology. And the pain point that the entrepreneurs identified were that a lot of information related to production practices and the behavior and the loans and the skills that perhaps these farmers develop were stuck in data silos. So, and this hinders the cooperation and the integration between these rural communities with the formal economy or with other actors in the ecosystem. So the idea was to develop, and actually was what they did, this digital identity protocol that is usable without internet connectivity or even a smartphone. So farmers, smallholders that live in places which have internet connectivity and they do have smartphones, of course, they can use these platforms, this digital identity with their smartphones, but it's also usable in analogic phones where farmers can get a voice print sign, so to participate and to share their profile, for example, with other actors in the ecosystem without having internet connectivity. So it was a way of providing a digital identity to non-digitalized farmers. Nowadays, this digital identity is being used by 36,000 smallholders, and it was implemented by 20 different projects involving something like 50 partners considering these 20 projects. So this digital identity protocol, the idea is, of course, to identify farmers, to verify their identity. Most of the times are third parties involved during this process. So after farmers get this identification and their identification is verified, then they have a profile which registers different activities that they currently do. And farmers are the ones able to share this profile with other actors in the ecosystem. And they can choose what type of information they want to share and with whom. So placing them in the middle of the ecosystem. So this digital identity allows smallholders to store, manage, and share with their consent different certificates that different organizations may issue about the work that they did with them. For instance, credit loans that these farmers are free of deforestation, that they have implemented an irrigation system, that they got a technical assistance for a certain practice, so on and so forth. This is a particular case study of Susi, a real case study of Susi Celdeño from Peru, which got her digital identity through a project that was implemented by Antamina, a mining company, which registered Susi Celdeño identity and also her farm. And in part of this project, this mining company handed in seeds, improved seeds to Susi, which is a coffee producer. So at this first stage, she got this digital identity and the improved seeds for her production. Then Susi registered that she sold her output to this export company, Perusa, and this company also registered that, well, Susi sold the coffee beans to them, and all of the actors can register also like reviews of the third parties. And in this line, also Susi was able to register that she got inputs from Argayu, and that she also attended to technical assistance. And with all this information, then Susi could apply and got a small loan from a fintech company that is specialized in small credits to farmers. So registering all the information that involves Susie in her daily activities. And sorry, as I was saying, Susie is the one in the center of the ecosystem and the one that has to consent the information that she wanna share with all of these actors in the ecosystem. So being the owner of her data. And for this platform to work, Identi is using a blockchain network that was developed by the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank. And this is another application case. It's called Mi Cacao, My Cocoa, that it's being financed by the German Cooperation Agency. And this project is aimed at developing an interoperable technology to provide traceability to small farmers, trying to position these farmers in international markets, and particularly registering those who apply sustainable practices and that their production is without deforestation. And Identi, well, that was selected to be part of this project. It's the platforms that enable the interaction between farmers and the other actors in the ecosystem, and it is also employing different systems. For example, this open food chain, which is a blockchain network specially designed for food traceability. Then it also employs Global Forest Watch, which is a company developing certificates based on satellite images of free of deforestation. And Celo, it's also employing Celo, which is also a system that enables farmers to receive direct payments based on the certificates that they get. This project was launched in Colombia and Peru in 2023, and nowadays, this month, there are currently being conducted field trials. And the scope, the idea is to reach 4,000 producers. And as I mentioned, well, I'm not part of the company. Hugo Piñarreta and Robinson Lopez are the two minds behind this company that was born in 2019. And these two entrepreneurs belong to rural families that then they went to the university. They started one software company, and after that they used their own savings to create these platforms to provide a digital identity to farmers. And actually they invested almost 1 year of researching different alternatives. And in 2020, they got a grant from MIT and also from the Peruvian government that were key for the development of this company. And nowadays, there are almost 20 employees working in Identi. As just final remarks, the spirit of the company is to place farmers in the center of the ecosystem, and so empowering them with their own data, and so being able to decide with whom they share the information, trying to reach this win-win ecosystem for all. And in a region where almost 70% of the rural economy is informal, digitalization is key for fostering social inclusion and to enhance living conditions, as it may help small farmers to get many services and also to be part of the formal economy. And that's all.
Thanks a lot, Grimos. Very interesting, especially how you explained also that, let's say, this development of this company from people also from with a farmer background and studying, and then also elaborating on that knowledge, and then really, putting let's say, the farmer in the center of the data ecosystem. Very, very nice. Maybe you can stop sharing the screen. I don't know if there are questions at this moment. Looking at the chat. No, I don't see it. If there's a question, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we move on.
Yeah, or they could, because for the sake of time also, because we still have something interesting to present. Yeah.
Okay. What we will do, just to recap, we had this presentation by Niklas presenting the principles of for farmer-centric data governance, and those are principles. And then we saw today very, very nice, I must say, and also different case studies, business cases where farmers are centric by Candice, and then Michael and Steffi, and last but not least, Gilmas. And now we want to take a bit of the next step to inform you a bit what we are doing from our side, FSD, how it connects, and maybe building on the expertise we have, and also listening to a lot of information expertise you have, how maybe we see what could be a next step. For that, I want to hand over to my colleague, Sidi, who will, in a nutshell, it will only take a few minutes because we really want to stop in time to explain you a bit what we're working on and where we hopefully can collaborate on with you.
Yeah, I would like to thank all
Sidi, you can also put it in. That's what I want to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I would like to thank the speakers for their very insightful presentations, and also for the participants for tuning in for this event. So here we will introduce a roadmap towards industry-wide adoption of farmer-centric data governance. It's our overarching ambition here at FSD. And as you can see, the thing that you've heard from the presenters, you can notice like some keywords like informed consent, benefit sharing, data privacy, data ownership. All those keywords are to the core of data governance. And but if you also gone through this presentation, you've noticed that all these organizations are applying data governance in an ad hoc, let's say, operational approach. There is no uniform way of dealing with the data of the farmers. And I know since we will not have anytime soon like a global unified framework for data governance across countries, that these are going to be a voluntary aspects of data governance, that active members in the industry should take up the initiative of implementing this. And for this, we have our contribution, and as I said, ambition at FSD is to push this effort forward, to have a voluntary framework for farmer-centric data governance from all the participants and the stakeholders in the ecosystem of smallholder farmers. So on our side, we started with developing theoretical principles for data governance based on literature, gray literature, interviews, best practices, legal framework for data governance. And then we submitted these principles to review by practitioners and actors in the data ecosystem of smallholder farmers. After that, we disseminated those principles in a report. We made events around this, and we tried to share it widely in the research and practitioner community to kind of create some sort of conversation and debate around it. What is next at FSD? That we are developing currently an online checklist, publicly accessible, that practitioners and people who are interested, organization and individuals, they could access and by answering some questions, get kind of a preliminary assessment to how they deal with the data of the farmers and the first mile actors, and if they are having a farmer-centric approach. And our, as I said before, overarching goal is to develop a certification scheme or an industry standard that actually guide companies on how to use the data of farmers in an ethical and fair way. This will require consensus and partnership and funding, and this is why we're trying to appeal to you to be part of this endeavor. We'll show you for the sake of visualization how we're developing this checklist. It's kind of a decision tree based on, as I said before, information that the user will input and in an algorithmic way, and based on the principles that we have developed, you will get an initial assessment on how you're governing the data and what should you do better to improve the way you handle farmers' data. And this is based on our research and the principles that we developed. So this is kind of a mock-up website to the website that we're going to launch. As I said, it's going to be freely accessible, and you answer the information that is given to you, I mean the questions, and then you will get an initial assessment according to the principles, and then you can save it with more detail as a report, and this could guide your practices or your implementation or design for the data governance. So what is ahead for FSD after this event? This is a series of events. We're planning for 3 events. We've done 2 so far. The next one is going to be about infrastructure and framework for data sharing and integration. I think Jeremias showed a very good example with Susie, how her data is collected by one, let's say one instrumental project, but has been shared across the board to create value for her from different entities. But this data sharing and data integration is the reason that data governance is needed. Because privacy issue will come in, security of the data, the fairness, its value is going to be created for the farmer. Informed consent, is it a repetitive systemic approach or it's a one-time thing? So there are a lot of questions to be answered once you embark on this kind of endeavors that integrate and share the data of the farmers. And I think having a solid understanding how data should be farmer-centric and how it should create value for the farmer is something that everybody in this ecosystem should aspire and abide by. So the next also on the agenda that we will further develop this checklist. We're hoping by the end of this year it will go online, so you could use it, but we will inform you in due time. And that's basically what is up at FSD now. And we, as I said before, if you have any contribution that you want to have or collaboration with us to take this further, we welcome you. You can contact us through our emails or visit our website, maastrichtuniversity.nl/FSD. So that's basically all from my side. And I will stop sharing my screen, and I think we still have a bit of time, 2 minutes to conclude this webinar.
Thank you, Sidi, for the clear explanation of what we are aiming for with the checklist. And please, to all of you, if you have some feedback or ideas, do not hesitate to contact us. We are in academia, but we definitely need the collaboration with practitioners and all organizations to make this beneficial for everyone. Having said that, there's a question from Michael. Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, I just as in the preparatory meeting that we had, I would like to extend my thanks to you for arranging this conversation on these important issues. And I think that your work, your manuals, it's giving us some comfort in what we are doing, because this is not easy. And again, if we fear too much the consequences of the trying to apply GDPR to the letter in an African context, for example, we might not get anywhere. So we have to find ways, and I think you are guiding the way somehow in that we must find workable ways that work and that we respect the farmers as good as possible in the given context. So, and of course, we should work. I very much recognize Jeremias for the digital identity. Maybe Jeremias can help convince some of my suppliers. We have in Europe, in Sweden also, no names mentioned, but there are companies working with very simple applications that you can lay on top to add a digital identity to an otherwise quite simple or platform that does not have this. And we can add a lot of value, just as Jeremias, muchas gracias, as he says, by having the real identities of the farmers and then adding another aspect of data quality to this. And then when the digital payments come in, again, thanks to Jeremias, I think all this, it's going to work much better with stronger digital identities. So again, thank you to all for fantastic contributions. I feel very inspired. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael, for the very warm words. Indeed, I see a lot of synergy. You said we are guiding, but we're only partly guiding. We also in academia, and we need the practitioners. We need the insights from, let's say, like people like you and others. And also, I see a lot of synergy between the presentations today. Everyone has a bit of the puzzle, and only together we can take next steps. So in that way, please be in touch with each other. Let's continue the discussion, and also the debate, and also the further development. We said about the website we want to develop with the principles and to apply them. But first, we have to also finish with the time. First, I want to thank indeed the speakers, Michael, Candice, Steffi, and Gremas. Thanks a lot for your presenting your ideas and also your expertise to the audience. Of course, also a word of thanks to the participants to joining us today. Don't hesitate to contact us. And last but not least, for my both colleagues to organizing this, Sidi and Niklas, thanks a lot also for presenting. It was very interesting and also very helpful, I hope, for a lot of people. And please stay in touch.